Hello and welcome to Enjoy the Wonder. I'm Eunjee.
I'm one Hee. We are so excited to dive into this next part of our podcast series. Like we mentioned last week, we really wanted to dive into how COVID has really affected people and how it's affected how people view their identity, like how it's affected their daily life, like how they view themselves. And one of the things that we were really excited about was just getting the perspectives of like two opposite ends of the spectrum, right? And so, this first part that we are going to talk about is what COVID has been like in the realm of education. And so, we have an interview that we did with a current student, a high school senior, and interviews that we had with current teachers, both middle school and the elementary school level. So, hopefully, these interviews will give you all just a sense of like what life has been like in school, and especially for those folks who haven't been in school for a while, we hope that this is a really illuminating conversation that we have with a group of pretty amazing folks. So without further ado.
All right. So we have a guest in the house today. I am super excited because this is my first time meeting him, but I've heard a lot about him through the grapevine of how amazing our youth group is, and in particular, how amazing this guy named Stefan is. So I wanted to welcome Stefan Kim to the show. Wonhee, maybe you can give him the justice of a proper intro.
So Stefan is one of our youth kids at SNY, the youth ministry at New Life. I won't go into his bio, but yeah, Stefan, do you want to like take maybe 30 seconds, introduce yourself, like what school do you go to, maybe some like fun facts about yourself?
Okay, sure. Hello, I'm Stefan Kim. I'm a senior at Memorial High School. Um,
Oh.
and yeah, like Wani said, I'm in the youth group. And Wani's my praise mentor, and that's how I know him. But yeah, I'm the praise team leader. And
What are some of the other stuff that you're involved in, maybe at school or at church?
So I guess yeah, at church, I'm also shepherd of my youth house church, Zion 2. Um, and yeah, at school, I've run in track. Um, I play the cello.
So you like the strings, huh?
Yeah, I do. I am very high energy and extroverted.
Oh,
So,
okay.
This is true.
um, yeah, I get a lot of energy when I'm around other people. Um,
Hmm.
and
What is your favorite fast food chain?
ooh, um, it's got to be McDonald's because
Oh,
it's cheap. It's cheap and it's quick.
I thought you were gonna say Chick-fil-A, and then we're gonna have like a Whataburger Chick-fil-A debate or something. But
Those
okay,
are top
McDonald's.
tier too, but McDonald's is
Mm.
just my go-to.
Mm.
So
Is there one close to Memorial?
yes, or there's McDonald's like
That-
everywhere. So
Oh yeah, you're right.
And you do not see McDonald's very often.
I know. So I'm excited to kind of get to know more about you, Stefan. And I heard two things that I'm already interested about in terms of the lens of COVID, which is why you're here on this podcast today. Um, you are a senior, so you're about to graduate. And then I heard that you are an extrovert, so you get energy from other people. And so how has it been? Because it's been 10 months since the pandemic kind of started here. And so you've had to maybe alter or shift even college applications or plans of how to go about with future steps. What are some things that have forced you into a new direction, maybe? And then also, second parter, I'll ask after you answer this one.
okay. So I guess with COVID and everything, for sure, like so many things like changed, and I wasn't like ready for like all these like
Mhm.
different things that were happening. Because like when it first hit, I thought we were just gonna be off for like a month, but then
Mhm.
of course that's not the case. But yeah, I was all with online school, and like that. I guess that like initially like I was kind of like really bummed about that. But
Mhm.
then like as I guess began online school, like I noticed myself like really enjoying I guess, just being able to just get out of my bed and then just hop onto my computer. Um,
Mm.
but like as time progressed with that, um, I noticed like that like it's really hard to focus when you're like at home, and it requires a lot of discipline. Um, and so I made the decision to go back in person. Um, so yeah, I kind of had like the best of both worlds, I guess. But for sure, going back in person has helped a lot in terms of being able to focus, and also just seeing people, um, like you mentioned, and I mentioned
Mhm.
how I'm extroverted, um, helps a lot with just I think just with my mood, and
Mhm.
just everything that goes on. Um, but I think yeah, in terms of like plans, yeah, I was really excited for senior year, and about just everything that was going to happen, that couldn't happen because of COVID, um, like I guess like homecoming, football games, things like that, um, like high school, um,
Yeah.
yeah. So a lot of those things are just canceled and I guess like cut off. I think yeah, that's definitely a bummer, but it's been I don't know. It's been kind of crazy, but yeah. I I honestly I don't think it's like true sadness, but definitely just like a yeah, just like a bummer that like we can't do these things. Um I think uh cuz like I mean, I was just really excited for senior but still I'm able to like see some friends and
Mhm.
do some things. So um like I kind of just like try to I guess find other things in terms of trying to have fun that I can do during this pandemic.
How has it been going back to school in person in terms of COVID and even like the systems in place for a school?
Man, so I think with COVID it's like really hard to like I guess be safe with a lot of students coming back, and this semester at my school, it's like a little over 70% of the students came back in person. So
Oh.
there's a lot of students who are like in the hallways and stuff. And so, yeah, some of my classes, it's like kind of packed, and there's way too many students, and there's like not really social distancing. And so that's one thing that like, it's a little worrisome, but so masks are always like required to be worn. But in the cafeteria in lunch,
Oh, yeah.
when we're all eating, it's kind of hard to like mandate that. So
Right.
there's a lot of students who are just like in groups and like eating together, and there's no really social distancing at the tables.
For us, like one of the things that we've been curious about as we've been or as we're talking to people is how do you feel like your identity may have shifted from where you were before COVID and like now like it's been 10 months, right? Do you feel like your sense of self, like who you identify as like what you identify with, do you think that has like shifted, and like what has shifted, what has changed, what has kind of stayed the same throughout this season?
I think one thing, the biggest change for me, um, was more like my relationship with Christ. I think before this pandemic, um, a lot of my faith was kind of dependent on, I guess, fellowship with others, and not, like me being still being pretty young. I always I guess coming to church, like the thing that I was most excited for was meeting my friends and seeing other people. But then when quarantine hit, like we couldn't do that. And then my faith was like pretty like shaken from that.
Mm.
Um, and I think through this pandemic, there was a lot of like time for me to just reflect on myself, and my relationship with Christ. And I think over this time, I've really just been trying to grow my relationship with Christ rather than, um, I guess, fellowship with other people. Even though that's still amazing, I think one thing that I really uh, lacked in was just my like personal relationship with Christ. I think yeah, just with my identity, it's it's been really um, it's been really like I guess challenging in terms of like figuring out who I am. But I think with this pandemic, um, we're given a lot of time to reflect on ourselves, and especially like in the beginning, when we're stuck at home like all the time. um, just that time really allowed me to grow, and revealed my true self, and uh, to myself, revealed my true self to myself, um, and like I was able to, I guess, grow from that, um, and I'm still growing, and I have a long way to go.
I just quit my job, but I was working with students last semester, and a lot of my students were really struggling. And so, if you were to, because I feel like I hear a lot of self growth happened over these past 10 months for you, what would be some advice you might even give someone who's not at a place where you are? They're still struggling because of the pandemic. What are just like simple words of encouragement that you might give to somebody else?
I guess the biggest thing, just like don't get caught up with so much of the negativity that's happening around us. And I think with
Mm,
social media and being as young as I am, or even someone younger, um, it's something that like I guess we grew up with and like has been in our lives like for our entire lives. Um, and just with this pandemic and with all the negativity going around, it's really hard to think light of anything. Um, but I think there's so many things that that we could be um, thankful about, and there's so many positives that is going on, that uh, it really changes, I guess, your mindset when you realize that, like, when you just reflect on like what you could be thankful for, and that like we're still here today.
yeah. No, I agree. Um, I think those are very wise words. And I didn't realize, yeah, for you guys, social media has literally been present all your life.
Hmm.
That's so interesting. Oh, I have so many questions for that on another time. But like, also, I think the a connection that Wanhee and I have is Teach for America and education and a passion for the youth. And one thing I admire about Wanhee is he's able to pour that into his life professionally, but even right now with SNY youth group, right? And then with you guys. So I think one thing I wanted to recognize is there are so many leaders or teachers, educators, youth mentors that have paused during this time to ask themselves, like, how can we make sure life doesn't suck for our students, right? That's like a question I hear in all the collaboration that I'm a part of. So I think like one thing I would love to know is like, or hear is what you are thankful for, either from the teachers you see at Memorial or even the mentors you have outside of high school during specifically this time.
Yeah. So I guess in school, there's a lot of there's a lot of students who are still online as well, um, and I guess there's just a few teachers who are um, I guess trying to accommodate both online and in person, and really like doing a good job at it. Um,
Mm,
and I think those teachers that like I've noticed that who are doing a good job really do care for the students, and it's really like evident in the way they teach or talk to people. Like I guess one example is like my orchestra directors. It's when I was online and when I was in person, I still felt like I was involved with whatever we were doing. Um,
mm,
but yeah, that's just like one thing that I'm very thankful for. Yeah, and then also I guess in our youth group, there's a lot of people who and a lot of students whose parents uh like don't want them to come out or anything. Yeah, I guess in our youth group, there's been a lot of things that's been doing well, and it just with our adult leaders who just been doing a lot in terms of just putting a lot of time and praying for us constantly. Um, there's been a lot of just growth in our youth group, and I think with all these events that are going on like every month, there's so much opportunity for students to really just grow in their faith and experience God.
I think one thing I'm curious about, like, so I think as like a praise team leader, as a shepherd, like you're very visible, right? Like you're pretty much at like the forefront of a lot of the things that we do, like Sunday service, like all the different events. Um, and I think that is pretty visible, like even on social media, like where people who don't really attend our church or like who don't know the context of what we do, like can see everything that's going on. Like, how have you felt about that? Like, especially nowadays with COVID and everything.
Yeah, like I guess when I see myself on social media, like it's like oh, like I'm on there, but um, I guess like for me personally, like I feel like I have um like another like sense of responsibility in terms of being a role model, especially with my co-members in praise team and also with my sheep in my house church, um, and I think that's one thing that's really been keeping me in line with my faith. Just um, I think my love for my sheep and my co-members of praise team really just um, inspired me and encouraged me to really just uh, grow in my personal relationship with Christ.
So one of the things we were kind of curious about, like you
Mhm.
had COVID like 3 weeks ago, right? Would you be okay with talking about that?
Mhm.
So how did it happen? Like, oh my gosh, what was the situation?
So I had a friend who had COVID, um, and I guess it's actually kind of like a somewhat like funny story. I told this to a few friends, and I got a small laugh from it. But yeah, just I was having some back pain, and um, like I was kind of tired, and I went up to one of my friends, and I asked him like, "Hey, can you give me a back massage?" And so he gave me one, and then the next day I found out that he had COVID, and, and he didn't know either. Yeah, and then a couple of days later, I started to notice my symptoms. But like, I guess the timing of getting COVID, like when I got it was really unfortunate because like it was right before Christmas, and like New
Mm.
Year's, and also our retreat for our youth group. I couldn't like attend that, and so yeah, the timing of that was just really um, like yeah, unfortunate. Yeah, and also like I couldn't spend time with my family during Christmas. Like they're all
Mm.
downstairs having a dinner, and then I was just in my room. I guess like one thing that like kept me alive in quarantine when I had COVID was just like hearing words from other people, just words of just comfort, and also just being able to like FaceTime my friends whenever I was like super down, or just whenever I was like just wanted to talk to people but I couldn't. So I would just FaceTime some of my friends, and um, there's a few friends who would pick up most of the time, and I'm really appreciative of that. Um, yeah.
And your symptoms were okay? You were just kind of on your own?
So I guess maybe it was just because I'm young, but yeah, my symptoms were like kind of like in waves, and they didn't last very long. Like my fever
Mm.
lasted like a day or two, um,
Mm.
and after like my fever went away, I got like a pretty bad sore throat, um, and then my taste and smell was gone. But in about like 7 days after that, um, my taste and smell was back, but not like fully. And then a few days after that, it was like fully back. Um, but yeah, I've heard like different symptoms from other people, and some of my friends who had it uh, like long before me still don't have their taste or still don't have their smell.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, just I'm pretty thankful for that. Um,
No.
Have you ever felt like frustrated with how adults are handling things as a like child? Not like a child, but like as a younger, as a non, I don't know if you're 18. I don't know, but you know what I'm
I'm
saying.
17, so
Like,
yeah, I am a child.
oh yeah, you're 17. Okay.
One thing that kind of um, irritated me a little bit was like when after I had COVID and after I had tested negative, some of my friends' parents like didn't want their kids, child's like seeing me or something, which I totally understood. Um, but yeah, with adults, there's so many like different responses from different adults, and my parents have been pretty good, but also not restricting me from doing like anything at all.
Mm.
And so I'm very thankful that they're allowing me to um, do certain things that some of my friends are not able to do just because of their situation. And so yeah,
Thanks, Stefan. We really appreciate you.
no
Uh,
problem.
yeah, sharing your thoughts because I feel like, yeah, like Eunjee said earlier, I know there's a lot of folks who don't necessarily interact with, like students who are in your shoes, and I feel like a lot of times we hear like school this, school that, like kids are going in person, but like we don't really get to hear from folks who are like actually there. And so I feel like the answers that you said, or like just the thoughts that you shared, I think were super valuable and can give some perspective to adults who like don't know what that life is like. So
Where can we find you on Instagram?
tell us your social media so we can ask our followers to follow you.
Yeah.
You can
They need to look out for the best, like the up and coming leaders of the world. So Stephen Kim, follow him at.
you can follow me on Instagram at Stephen R Kim, StephenRKim.
All right,
What kind of
everybody.
content do you post?
I don't really post content on Instagram, but you can also find me on YouTube. It's just Stephen Kim.
Oh, what do you do on YouTube?
I make videos for church stuff, but I'm soon to be making content, hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say
don't-
his videos are pretty funny. They're pretty funny.
Stefan, do you know what you want to major in college or anything like that? Or where you want to go maybe? Or, out of state, in state?
I only applied to in-state schools. I'm planning to major in business. I've gone to A&M, but I'm waiting for UT.
Ooh, business UT hookups.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
My grades aren't the best, so I'm not sure if I will get into UT McCombs because of how hard it is to get in right now. But if I don't, that's fine.
Yeah, because fun fact, I applied to UT and my grades were pretty good, but I didn't get into McCombs. But then I just internally
That's so encouraging. Wow.
In terms of getting in, but I didn't get into business. But then I internally transferred after freshman year, so I could go in sophomore year. Well, we're excited to see where you go and what kind of businessman or not, wherever God takes you, what kind of businessman you might become, and all the content that we're gonna follow.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Stefan, for coming on to our podcast. We really appreciate you. Hopefully maybe you'll become a recurring guest. You can be the voice of the youth for Enjoy the Wonder.
Let's all say it for fun. 3, 2, 1. Enjoy
the wonder.
The wonder.
Hey. All right. Thanks, Stefan.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Stefan. Something I'm really glad that Stefan mentioned was just being able to recognize specifically his orchestra teacher, but the great teachers in his life that have been working hard during COVID, because
we are so excited to continue on with the series of the pair teacher and student with 2 of our very own teachers in the house. Oh my goodness. So one thing that Wonhee and I connect with a lot is our first connection as educators, right? And both of us have unfortunately, fortunately, who knows? Maybe we'll find out in today's little talk right now, but we have left the classroom. But we have 2 dear family members who are still in it and maybe have so much wisdom to share in these past 10 months of teaching in COVID. So introduce yourselves. We'll go with Mr. Hua, as you might hear in the classroom of Pilgrim Academy. Tell us about yourself, Chris.
Why do you have to say Mr. Hua? You sound so old. But yeah,
you identify with, Chris?
a name? No, I really don't. I don't like that name at all. Actually, a lot of my students actually just call me Hua. I don't like the Mr. in front. Yeah, but 28. I'm in the middle of my 6th year in the classroom right now. I teach 8th grade science, and Josephine kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I teach at Pilgrim Academy. Why are you laughing?
Did you listen to my last episode yet?
Yes, sort of. Yes. Should I call you Joey instead?
Oh,
Yeah,
for the year 2021.
Yeah, but teaching Houston Pilgrim Academy to K through 8, but specifically 8th grade science. The school I'm at is like predominantly Hispanic, like 97% Hispanic, low income, Title I school, the whole shebang.
Fun fact: did you know my close friend Josh actually teaches at the same school as Mr. Cho? I found out
no, his name is Mr. Hua. Mr. Cho.
No,
is
Mr.
Josh.
Cho is Josh. Yeah. But I found out later. I was like, oh, what a small world.
And I learned about him because all like the younger kids kept on calling me Mr. Cho. because I guess we don't even look alike at all. But yeah, but
You know.
yeah, but they kept calling me Mr. Cho, like Mr. Cho. I'm like, dude, I'm not Mr. Cho. Like, and then I realized there's another Asian guy teaching at the school now, and so that's why they're mixing me up.
Mm,
I've been there.
I'm sure.
Me too. So the next person, you might hear the word Onni pop up, right? But her professional name is Miss Chi, Miss Jessica Chi. Um, so she's coming in all the way from New York City. So we have two very different perspectives, even in like city, even in just different experiences. So Jessica, introduce yourself.
Are you gonna call me Jessica this entire?
I don't actually, guys. If I grew up calling my brother or my sister by their real first names, I would get like Mehmet, like hit, or So I will just stick with Onni, and we will allow Wanhee to also kind of navigate by being the main moderator. Although I do talk a lot, so who knows who will? Yeah.
Okay, you can call me Jessica for this podcast if you want.
Okay.
All right. My name is Jessica, or Miss Chi, I guess. I am a fourth grade teacher in the Bronx in New York City. I have been teaching at my school for 7 years now. And I also similarly work in a school that's like 90% Black and Hispanic. We have good percentage of Bengali students, small percentage of Muslim students at our school as well.
So I think, we don't want to beat around the bush here, right? You guys are here because there's just been so much weight on the shoulders of teachers in the past 10 months, right? You guys have started off as the heroes of our nation, right? And not that you guys are not still our heroes, but now it's like, well, how much more can you carry? How much more can you kind of hold on your shoulders as we try to navigate this pandemic? And as you guys kind of have that almost like, I don't know, you guys have this quote, I don't know, responsibility, I don't know, like a better blah, 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 but like you have this responsibility to, be there with these kids, right? And so I would like to just know, like, how has your identity of being a teacher shifted from pre-COVID, not post, like during COVID? And so that is my question.
Yeah, I think obviously having the experience of being, a teacher during like in person versus now more virtual, there's a lot of things have shifted. And obviously, y'all can kind of speak on that too because both of y'all, Wani and Josephine, have been teachers in the past as well. But I think probably like the biggest shift as a teacher has been like the connection aspect of like making like real time connections with students because obviously like over a screen it's doable, but it's like exponentially harder to do that. I don't know if Jessica, you feel the same way on that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's probably one of the number one things that has changed the most. And I think in terms of like connecting that to like identity as a teacher, I think like the past however many years I've been teaching, a part of that identity is building relationships with the students
For sure, for
in
sure.
person. And so like not having that, I think has had me kind of struggle with like the joy of teaching, and what that means now and what that looks like for me now too, as we've been remote and we've actually been in person, in the city, but back and forth, remote and in person and back and forth. So yeah, that's definitely something that I've been struggling with, in trying to reimagine almost, because I feel like that those shifts are going to continue to happen.
I'll kind of add on to that too, because I think like we all know, kind of like your role as a teacher isn't just to be like a like a instructor of knowledge. Like you're a mentor in a lot of ways and things like that. But I think because of COVID, a lot of that mentor aspect may have gone away because of just again the difficulties of virtual. So yeah, a lot of times I feel like I'm just kind of like giving instruction, like, hey, we're doing this today. I'm just teaching this, and so on and so forth. I don't know, Jessica, are you having your students like turn on their cameras when they are virtual and stuff like that too?
We I have them do it when, like, at certain moments. So I don't make them turn their cameras on. I mean, there's, you know, those memes, like, even during staff meetings, I'm the teacher without my camera on.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's fair to, you know, it's not the same kind of a situation as being in the classroom. But there are moments when I will make them, like when we do our morning greeting, I make everyone turn their cameras on to greet each other, like face to face. When I'm doing like checks for material, I have them kind of like sneak in. When we do like a brain break, I'll have them turn it, you know, so like at little moments, I do have them turn it on. So it's not too overwhelming, but that I do get to see their face and they get to see each other as well. But it's so funny, like the minute I like leave my Zoom meeting on during my lunch meetings, because some of them just want me to leave it on so they can talk. Literally, the minute I turn my video off and I'm gone, they all turn their videos off, talking to each
Oh,
other.
that's so cute.
But yeah, kind of going off what you said, Chris, I actually almost feel the opposite in the sense that I feel like because we are working with young children during these very traumatic times, I think at least for as an elementary school teacher, we are kind of being thrown into like the counselor, like mental health provider role a lot more deeply during these times. And on one hand, it's really great because I am like a really big believer in the idea that like social emotional learning is just as much of a priority as teaching like reading and math. But at the same time, I think it's the role that's kind of been thrown onto us is also very emotionally and mentally draining as humans who are going through the same trauma, because we ourselves as adults are processing everything right now too in real time, and yet we are expected to kind of like guide that process for our students as we ourselves are dealing with it. And I mean, we're not trained professionals, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a counselor. I know that there are many times we're called to be counselor like and to be social worker like and to be mentor like and all of those things, but you know, we are also not, you know, professionally trained in the ways that our students do really need. And so kind of just like balancing that space. And then on top of that, right, like they say social emotional learning, culturally responsive and historically responsive teaching during these like very, you know, stressful times.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, but you know, standardized testing is going to stay the same. And we want you to give these weekly assessments the same way we did before all of this. So it's like a lot.
That balancing act. Yeah.
One thing I was curious about, like, I think it would be cool to learn what brought you guys into teaching. Like, why'd you guys get into teaching? Why have you stayed as teachers for however long you have been? And then how do you feel like this year as teachers during COVID, do you feel like it's like changed how you felt about your original desire to be a teacher? Like, has it shifted? Like, how has this year affected all of that?
Great question, Wonhee.
I can go first. So I didn't always originally want to be a teacher. If you know my backstory, for those that know me, I actually wanted to be a doctor for a while. But kind of like the senior year of my college year, I decided, hey, this isn't for me. I wanted to be a doctor for all the wrong reasons. And I actually sort of had always kind of wanted to be a teacher, but the reason why I chose not to was just because I've always also additionally wanted a big family. And teacher salaries, you can't do that really. But I realized that at the end of the day, like I want to do something I'm passionate about, and I know it sounds so cliche, but like I'm passionate about kids, and I really want to be like there for as a mentor figure and just kind of like walk them through next stages in life and things like that. Especially like I'm really my heart's for like the middle kind of years, so like eighth grade is the reason why I'm there, while they're transitioning. So that's kind of like one of the main reasons why I wanted to become a teacher.
Yeah, sure, guys. And if you've seen, if you've seen me on the football field and you've seen my defense and how much I've improved in the last few years, you would understand why Chris is such a good teacher.
Oh yeah, because
Just
I'm
wanted to.
harsh and I'm blunt. Yes.
Mhm.
I
However,
think we
motivating.
Tunjip that part out.
Anyways, continue.
And what were the other questions again, Wanhee? I'm sorry.
Yeah. How do you feel like this past year being a teacher during COVID affected how you view like your desire to be a teacher? Like, do you think, yeah, how's that affected all of that?
That's really a tough question because truthfully, this is actually gonna be my last year in the classroom, but not
Mm,
because like, oh, teaching is hard and teaching is difficult. Like when people ask me, I say that I have like probably the best job in the world. I love my job to like no matter how like tired I get or or like how much I complain sometimes to my wife. Sorry, Joanne, if you're listening, um, about my job. Like I truly believe I have like the best job in the world. But in terms of just like teaching and how much it's changed, I think a lot. I think it made me realize how like how much like as teachers like we really do need to change our style of approach in a lot of ways as teachers. And I think because what I realized like even for me like I'm quote unquote like a vet. I've been in this for a while, but a lot of things I'm doing in the class or I did in the classroom I can't do anymore, right? I can't do, these hands-on type things. I can't like so a lot of things have to shift and a lot of change that needs to occur. And I think that like kind of sparked me like a lot of teachers that are in my position like get really stagnant in their craft too. And I think that this was like a good wake up call for not just me, but for a lot of people like, hey, like if you want to continue improving, like if you want to continue being a better teacher for like these kids and for, the future generation, then things do need to change. Especially like right now, like I would say I'm half the teacher I normally am.
mm.
Just because like the crutch that virtual learning. And do these kids deserve that? No, they don't deserve that, right? Like obviously like we can make excuses that all these things are happening for us, like all these things are going against us, but at the end of the day, like these kids, they shouldn't get the short end of the stick because of that.
Mm. How have you been processing all that? Like as a teacher, knowing that like you as a teacher are doing everything you can, right? Like, obviously, like there's like crutches and stuff, and so like how do you balance the fact that like you're very limited versus like the kids not like have like deserving so much better, but not really being able to like get those two to
meet
meet up?
meet that in
Yeah.
the middle. Yeah, there's a lot of sorries.
Mm,
No, like I tell my students like sorry all the time. Like I'm so sorry. Like normally, like we'd have like a really fun lab for this, or like I would explain like, hey, this is what we normally do, but like here's a PowerPoint, or here's a
mm,
video, or here's like an online lab that we can do together. Um, so I say sorry a lot, but and I think I'm very grateful that I have eighth graders, and there's some level of maturity there, right? But where they can kind of like understand and comprehend like, hey, yeah, like we get it, like Mr. Hall, you're trying your best, you're doing your best, you're doing, and we see that. And yeah, that's all I can really say. Like I can try all these different avenues. Like we're blessed with technology, so I can try all these different things. But no matter what, it's not the same as being in person. No
mm.
matter how much we try.
Thanks for sharing that. Jessica, do you mind sharing your story?
Yeah, Jessica.
Please stop me if I start going off on many tangents because I feel like I could.
It's all you.
Um, so I guess going into teaching, I've always wanted to be a teacher. After college, I went through a kind of my dad, of course, as any Asian dad wants me to be a doctor. So I found a way around it, saying I would be like a speech pathologist in a school though. And so I was pursuing psych for a while. I was I went to Cambodia. I lived in Cambodia for a little over a year, and I kind of rediscovered that where I want to be is in the classroom,
Mm,
and I want to be a teacher in the classroom. So I went back for school for teaching, and ended up in New York, and then started teaching in New York. When I went to Cambodia, my vision was I want to teach students who don't have a teacher, right? Who aren't getting education because they just don't have teachers there. Was my kind of like 22-year-old heart in going out there to teach. And I mean, even now it's teaching students in ways that are equitable and empowering students who may not have resources to do so otherwise. But I definitely think that this year has shifted a lot of how I think about myself as a teacher and what my future is in teaching as well. But at the same time, I don't think this year is in it of itself what did it, all that. I think it's been building in me every year. And I think those around me knows like I get very stressed out with work a lot. And all I do is work, and it's a little consuming of me. I think this past year, kind of in the extreme situations that we were pushed to, revealed a lot of ways that I think we could have improved education, and we could have done things, changed for the better. And yet, like they say, like in extreme situations, your true character shines. And like the true character of the education system shined, right? And it was not, I think all of these years I was hoping that I could change things even in the little ways I can in my classroom. And I know that I have, and I don't doubt that. But I think every year I was hoping that things could be different, or things would be a little different. And I'm talking a little vaguely right now because it's a lot to go into, like what the inequities of the school system, right? But I think this year kind of just like opened my eyes to, oh, no, it's not. Like even a pandemic won't change the fact that there will always be people who aren't in this classroom making all the decisions of what happens in the classroom for us. And so it's just a year of like coming to realization of certain things that I'm trying to still figure out whether it's something that I can just not care about as much and just do the good work that happens in the classroom, right? Or if it's something that is going to keep bothering me and maybe has to take me out of the classroom to do something else. I don't know yet what that might look like. I do think that I am being kind of challenged to be more creative with what it means to work with students in the classroom. I think that the classroom is my favorite place to be, and yet it's also sometimes the most limiting place to be. And so trying to figure that out is something that I'm still kind of going through.
Do you have maybe one example of kind of the frustrations that you're feeling about, like, hey, like I thought this might have been better, or like this pandemic like really revealed to me just like how broken the system is, like just to kind of help folks get a sense of like what really is kind of the issue that you feel like you're seeing as a teacher?
I think the whole thing about assessments was something that was really stressful for me this year. Schools are a lot of talk that we want to be, culturally responsive, and we want social emotional needs of our students are important, right? But what are the supports we get? We don't get training on any of that. We don't get training on like, the things that we're doing directly in the classroom. But the district will give us weekly Google forms for our third graders to take assessments on weekly. A lot of like, it just doesn't match up with what they're saying and what they want to do versus like what they actually do. And then the frustrations are that as a teacher, I'm the one that has to give my kids the Google form that they're going to fail because it wasn't designed for them to pass. I'm the bad person, and I'm and then I'm the one that has to, deal with that in the classroom. And then as long as I get the numbers to, the district. And so I think there are some people that just give it and get over it and don't think about it and move on, right? And can be okay with that. I can't, and I let it bother me a lot. And so just trying to, especially now, I can see what you can see what the kids really need, right? They need friends. They need interaction. They need attention. They need love. They need discipline. They need grace. They need all these things, right? And I'm wondering, like, is the classroom a place where we're giving all those things to them in the way that they need? And if it's not, and if I don't believe that I am, is it somewhere I just want to stay and, you know, do my own bit in my classroom and know that my class is okay? But that's often not the case, right? Like, it has to be a school effort. It has to be every teacher, staff member, principal, district, all believing this thing for it to work. Or else it's one little me kind of just like trying to do my own little thing.
Man,
And it's hard.
you kind of just hit it on the spot for me for like I kind of said earlier like well, I plan on leaving the classroom, and that's because like I want to make like more systemic changes in education, and like just like you said, like as much as I believe I'm making all these changes in my classroom and everything's going differently, it's like it's just one class of like one school of one district in one state. And yeah, man, you hit it on the head. Nail, yeah, that was
Nail in the coffin.
sure. But like just kind of add on a little bit to what Juan he was saying too. Like something that's been like really exacerbated in during the pandemic for me too is like yeah, inequity for sure. Like I'm not sure about Jessica in your school, but like the first like 6 months of the pandemic, you know, 40% of our kids didn't have devices, you know, or internet. HIC, luckily, like they're you know making changes to that, obviously, but you know, for 6 months or so, they didn't have that. And like a lot of my students, they have like younger ones in their home right now, and they have to take care of their younger ones while their parents are working. Or like I have certain kids who their parents actually had to quit their job and be, you know, stay home parents because, you know, their kids have to have a caretaker at home. And yeah, it's just like inequity is so real. And yeah, if you don't believe it, I mean, like just look into, you know, any of these students' home.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had a lot of my students, you know, turning in Google Classroom assignments on their, you know, parents phones.
Yeah.
So, you know, how much can you go after a student for not attending all the Zoom meetings when their internet is not working at home? And, you know,
That's the reality.
Yeah. As teachers, what do you feel like is the biggest change that you've seen in your students since the beginning of the pandemic?
The thing about eighth graders, like they're digital natives, like they were born in this era like of technology, but a lot of them are actually really bad at technology. Like they can use TikTok, they can use YouTube, they can use Instagram and stuff, but like saving a Word document or using Google Documents or Google Drive, like they don't know how to do that. But I've seen like in the past 6, 7 months or so, there's just been a huge shift. Like, oh yeah, we can do this now. We can do this now, and like it's been really cool to see like that growth and them like actually learning useful technology that they're gonna use in in college or high school or in the workplace. So that's been really cool to see that shift of just like learning.
I'll share a positive one too. I think I do really see a yearning for kids to be with each other. They crave coming to school now because they want to hang out with their friends. You know, it's a little sad because it's not the same. Of course not. I mean, they have to come into school, sit 6 feet apart from each other. We don't have gym. We don't have recess. You know, like they have to sit in the classroom facing forward. It's very different. But I can just see that they even just like love coming to Zoom meetings to see each other. And I think like appreciation for their friends and like the community is a lot deeper. And I'll say it for my class because we're in person and we're remote. We go back and forth, but I have a small group. And so I know it's a little bit harder with classes where I only have 10 kids in my group, but the full remote teacher has like 40 kids in her group with her and just 40 kids. And I know there are different struggles there too. Like just seeing like their desire to be with each other in that time is something that I've been kind of been feeding my joy in seeing, and even just encouraging me, even though I want to log off, like keep my Zoom on during lunch meetings so they can talk for once.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like when you think about students in school, the number one thing is like, oh, I don't want to be here, right? Or like they just like, is it like lunchtime yet? Like when can I go home? But that's awesome to hear. I think we sometimes forget that.
On the other hand, too, there are students where it's had a negative like
Mm.
kind
Oh
of
yeah,
the way
facts.
where there are students that are like, what do you mean? I have to come to school? I don't even know what that means anymore. Like, can I just stay home and be remote? Like, I will have students who are supposed to be in person, but they've gotten so comfortable or lazy with being at home now that, I mean, they could do minimal work at home and still be counted present. You know, like maybe they've learned to work the system in certain ways. Um, but at the same time, like if you push it, they do want to come to school. I don't think they just realize it because they've been in such a habit of like being at home and not having to move. I mean, I know a lot of adults who think that too. Like, oh my goodness, can you imagine?
I know, that's what I was saying. I bet you're speaking to a lot of adults.
What does that even mean anymore? Like going to work 5 days a week, commuting?
So, kind of building off of that, I guess that's a very good transition to my next question. It's like you were reading my mind. But I think Jessica, like as you were in New York, like nationally, there was this like huge debate about New York schools, right? Like, do teachers go to in-person school? Do teachers not go in person? Like, where is that border? And Chris, I don't know if you've had to go in person this year, but how did you, I guess, like balance the idea of like, yes, I want to be there for my kids as their teacher, like to be the most effective teacher, but also like, hey, here's my like own personal life and safety that I have to account for, right? Like, how did you think through that process as you were, told to come in person or told to stay home, vice versa?
I mean, it was like a roller coaster of emotions, of mind shifting, changing back and forth. Well, there's always fear with the unknown, right? And I think there's always couple that with a question of whether politicians have, teachers at the centers of their hearts and minds when they make decisions is like a scary place to be. I do think that throughout the whole course of deciding whether to bring students in person, what that would look like, and kind of there have been decisions that have been made that I definitely don't agree with timing of opening and all of that. At the same time, I can't argue. Of course, it's better to be in person. Of course, it's better to have our students there. But there's also you can't demand that without certain safety and certain other things that have been taken into account. And the question is, are they, and have they, and who's doing that? So do you have a union that is pushing for that for you in certain ways, and or are you going to be forced into unsafe situations? There's a lot of numbers being read that, oh, well, schools aren't really transmission sites. The numbers are low there, right? But I still, commute an hour to work every morning on the train. And I don't feel safe every time, right? And you can't ignore that either. So there's a lot, I think, that goes into it. At the end of the day, we have to go. And when I'm there and with my kids, I don't hate it, right? It's great. I do there.
That's good.
On my subway ride home, I'm thinking differently, right? So even in the course of a day, I go through different where like how I think about the situation. Overall, though, I do think that there are always people that are making decisions for what directly affects my day to day that don't always have our best interests in mind. And I mean, it is hard. New York City is 1.1 million students, right? Like there are lots of students and thus lots of families and lots of demographics of families, right? Demographics of parents that the city is dealing with, right? So there are going to be decisions made, I think, that will never please one or the other. But I got my first vaccine.
Ooh, congratulations.
Wow.
Congratulations.
So I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're on the way back. Chris, how do you feel about all this?
Yeah. I'm in HISD, and we pushed our school year a month back. And then the first 6 weeks of school, we actually were virtual. And then after 6 weeks, we went through like a blended model where students get to choose whether they come back in person or they're virtual, but teachers have to come back. And for me, like what made me more comfortable coming back, luckily I'm really close with my admin team, and so like I gotta actually talk them out through like, what's y'all's plan? What's the district's plan of like rolling this out? Like, how are we keeping teachers safe? How are we keeping students safe? And so I mean, like I was very lucky to like see their plan. Like, obviously 6 feet distance apart, like everyone's wearing masks. Like anytime you leave or come in a classroom, you're hand sanitizing. Like between me and the students, I literally have like a plastic cover, that's blocking us and
Mm.
things like that. And I mean, just so on and so forth. They made a lot of changes, and I mean, HISD made a lot of like rules and contingencies based off like outbreaks and stuff like that. They've kind of backtracked a little bit on that, unfortunately. But like going in, I actually felt really confident, like, hey, like we can actually do this. But what's crazy was actually after the first day we came back, they shut down the school because there was a COVID scare.
Mm.
But I like tell a lot of my friends, like I feel really safe at school. I feel more safe at school than I do like if I'm like going to a park, something like that. Just because I know there's all these precautions, and I know like surprisingly, like all the students that are in person are very compliant about the rules. Like no one's like making a fuss about masks. No one's making a fuss about like washing their hands like consistently. I mean, kids, they don't wash their hands, nasty. But like using hand sanitizer and all these different things. So um, I was very fortunate to have like an admin team that was very transparent. Like, hey, we're gonna keep you safe. We're gonna keep the kids safe, and this is what we're gonna do to ensure that.
Mm.
I think, yeah, I agree too. I think the safety within the school is there, but I also feel like it gets a little tricky when there are certain plans put into place, right? That, for example, like you guys were supposed to open, and the minute you opened, you closed, right?
Yeah.
So literally, that's what's happening at our school too. They're like, we're going to have more testing available. We're going to
Mm.
test more students every week. But guess what that means when COVID cases are rising nationally? What does that mean? That means that you're going to find cases every single
Yeah.
week.
Mm.
Oh, were we supposed to answer that? Was that like a teacher-student moment?
Yeah, there was a pause. I was like, oh, I don't know the answer to this. What do I say?
I don't want to sound
I
stupid.
got an email thing, and so I was like, oops, that was a mental pause. Students, what's the answer? Like we close, right? So we're in school for a week, and then we get random testing done, and we have a building of 3 schools, right? We have 3 different schools in our one building. People traveling from all over New York.
Yeah.
Are there going to be at least 2 cases? Yes. And so then we close for 10 days. So actually our school has been remote for 10 days. Like since the week we got back from break. And
Oh, wow.
so like it's almost going to be like a back and forth, right? We're in school for a few days, and then they're going to find more cases, and then we have to go out of school for 10 days and then go back. And like there's, well, actually it's better than having no days in school, right? For the kids than to have, some days in school, which is true. But at the same time, as a teacher, I'm like planning in class lessons, and then I have to like
Yeah.
literally shift the next day and plan all remote lessons. It's just a lot of just back and forth and back and forth. Yes, I think safety is being more highly regarded, but this is our first time dealing with this kind of a pandemic, right? And so even schools in cities, the way that they're making decisions, it's their first time. So they're not making decisions out of the best, like practices, right? They are just making these decisions too, based off of like what they think. And, based off of hopefully maybe some data that has been collected during this time. Also, a lot of what decisions are being pushed in New York City is by rich white parents, right? Like, to be honest, and it's affecting, students. Like I had a class full of students, And because the mayor pushed our school to stay open during a time when my students did not feel safe to be coming to school, they dropped out to go full remote. But the mayor has closed the ability of students to opt back into in-person. So once you drop out of in-person, you have to stay full remote for the rest of the year, right? Because of this push, I lost students to go fully remote, because mayor pushed the schools to open in a time when people don't feel safe bringing their kids to school. But it's different depending on which borough of the city you live in too.
Yeah, it's a really complicated story. Feels like in Houston, New York, and that's not even like counting like what's going on in California and all those places. So yeah, really appreciate you guys going through all of that. I feel like the little impact that my words can say, I hope you guys know that you're appreciated.
Yeah, you guys are so appreciated.
Sound more sarcastic, Eunjee.
No, I mean, like, I had a baby during the pandemic.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
and
I couldn't
yeah,
tell.
oh my
I couldn't
gosh, you guys
tell
don't
by
see
your
my
Instagram.
social. I post about him all the time, right? But like at the beginning of motherhood, I was running on like maybe 2 hours of consecutive sleep. And so was my sister, because that was when the pandemic started and teachers had to figure out stuff, right? So not like just the fact that you guys had to be these guinea pigs, but you guys are such amazing teachers and educators that I know, for the amount of like just work you guys really had to go through. I just really not sarcastically at all, like truly appreciate both of you for all that you guys do. I know that Chris just loves his kids here too, and so I know that this has been very difficult. I also know that you guys have gotten creative, like you have a project, Chris. What is it? You want to plug it in 2 minutes or no?
Oh yeah. Wow, so random. But the past maybe year and a half, 2 years, a few friends and I have been working on a project called Potsie, Podsie. You can, if you want to look it up, potsie.org. Essentially, it is a kind of toolkit or a tool that teachers can use, surrounded by like research back instruction and learning. So if you know the concept like spaced repetition and interleaving, like those few things are like we've kind of like condensed those in kind of like this flashcard app, kind of like Quizlet type deal, but better. Um, yeah, but hopefully you can have me back on and maybe
Yep.
Josh one day and we can actually like fully talk about it. I don't want to talk too much about it.
Yeah, no, we definitely plan to invite you and Josh Ling, another fellow TFAer in the house. Anyways, not in the house right now, but yeah, and just to kind of like learn more about that. And I think one question I did have is, during this pandemic, if we find out you're a teacher, we just want to hear all about how teaching has been during the pandemic, right? And so I'm also just curious, like, what are some other identities or no other word, just identities you've had over these past 10 months that either you feel like have gotten like overshadowed by the fact that your main identity is teacher during this time, or how have you been able to kind of navigate that and balance that out?
Jessica, you want to go first, or
I mean, I know somebody got married.
Yeah, Chris, go first.
Yeah, the way you phrase that a little bit, like actually, I would say like being a teacher isn't actually my main identity, like that, or changed over COVID. I would say it's like probably fourth or fifth down the rung actually. So like obviously like first would be like I'm a son, a brother, that type of things, like a husband now, like you said. Shout out to my wife again.
Ooh,
That's the second time.
congratulations.
Yeah, but I think like something that has shifted a lot is like the fact that like I am a believer, I'm a Christian. Like I think that aspect has changed a lot over COVID. Um, Obviously, the fact that we're virtual now, and so like we all know like community is like a huge aspect of like being like a Christian, and like we all believe like fellowship is really like important. So I think that's like that fact has changed. The fact that I'm a house church leader, and so the fact that I've had to like navigate what that looks like and really navigating that well, um, between my friends and things like that in my house church has really shifted as well. So I think probably the biggest change for me is like what it means to be like a follower of Christ. I think because that has really, y'all can probably attest this as well. Like y'all have like probably shifted a lot of things in y'all's, Sunday gatherings or your house church meetings as well.
I think to give another perspective to that, for me as well, I think my identity in Christ has lost its way a lot this year, actually. I think that for me, the stress of navigating teaching during the pandemic, I think was consuming. And it took all my time. Already, I think I also kind of put my teacher identity as priority in what I do in my life and what hours go into um, that I prioritize in ways that are probably not very healthy. But especially this year, I think it expounded that time um, and for example, going to small group um, virtually on Zoom, it was really hard. Like I was drained all day from trying to get my like 45 kids onto Zoom all day long, and then to sit there and then be on another Zoom meeting with actually new people that's joined or that I don't know. It was really hard for me to commit to that, and so I stopped. So that was kind of one of the things that I always did while I was here was small group and my community through small group. And after not going to that for a while, I kind of slowly like made less time for all the other things in my life in which I give to my relationship with God. So I think what got lost a lot was my relationship, the time that I put into my relationship with God during this year. I'm trying slowly to get it back this year. Maybe also, I didn't realize how much traveling was a part of my identity, I think. Especially being in New York, I don't have any close family here. A lot of my close friends are in California. So, really, what I do here is work. Like, my identity in New York is work a lot. But I balance a lot of that with traveling. I balance a lot of that with making sure I spend time with family. And even if I am across the country, I will, make weekend trips to LA to visit my friends. But I think having all of that kind of stripped away too, especially during a year when my two best friends from college got married this year, of all years to get married. My nephew was born this year, of all years to be born. And so I feel like the time when I like should have been traveling and been near people that I love the most, I wasn't able to. So that was kind of hard too. And I feel like, yes, a lot of that was gained back through FaceTime, right? So thank you, FaceTime and Zoom. But again, right, like it's not the same thing. So that's something that I can't wait to get my second vaccine for.
Me neither. I think like I'm really glad because one thing Wani and I wanted is that through this near podcast that we're just trying to share this year is to really allow this to be a platform for different voices that we find dear to our hearts. And so I guess as we close, is there just like one thing you would want our listeners to know about you guys as teachers or anything else you guys might want to share?
Like, Eunjee, when you said, oh, we appreciate you guys and we love teachers and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, touchy.
And of course, I love hearing that and that's great. But like Chris said too, like this is the year that I've been the most experienced teacher. And yet this is the year that I felt like the worst teacher. Like I felt like I've like failed as teachers, like almost every other day. Right, in little ways, even just ways when like I plan this lesson and my students all are silent. Right, there's like very little confirmation throughout the day that really kind of is encouraging to me that I am a good teacher, and I know I'm not a bad teacher. So that's the kind of year that it has been. And so while I appreciate when people say, like, teachers are the best, we love you guys, and blah, 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 again, I want to challenge everyone, what does that actually look like in how you live your life too? I think it's everyone's responsibility, whether you have a child in the public school system or not. I think it's everyone's responsibility as people in this society to invest and be invested in the children, in this education system of our kids. Because if we're not, it's not going to be the change of the Secretary of Education that makes a difference, right? It's literally going to be a mindset change of how we view education and how we view, what classes look like for our students and for our kids. So they're very thankful for my Dunkin' Donuts gift cards, but like my challenge here, I guess what I want people to know is, like what more could you be doing?
That's my sister.
Juan, here, you're gonna hype me up too when I
got
after I
you.
go.
I got you. I got you.
I got you too.
Let's be honest. Eunjee's the more hype person on this podcast. I'm just the voice.
Got you. I got you.
I think for me, probably what I would lead with is education. I think starts at home. I'm talking to, I think, future parents or just parents in general. Education starts at home. Accountability with your kids, like read to your kids, like being in the classroom and just seeing like my eighth graders, the students that do the best are the ones that are held accountable at home. Students that do best are the ones who have been reading like all their life, and just like I would say as a parent too, just even though I'm not a parent, but like I see on the other side as a teacher, be present, but don't be overbearing in your child's education, things like that. Like actually care, like ask them, like really, like, hey, what did you learn today? Teach me. Like actually, like don't just say what did you learn today, like, oh, teach me what you learned today. Like actually, like have them think through it and like thought process through those things. Like I always tell my friends, like, hey, like I have a lot of friends who worry about, oh my god, like what elementary school should I put my kid in, or what middle school, what high school. I'm like, at the end of the day, like yes, those things are important, but if that foundation isn't built at home, then it's all for naught, right? So that's what I would leave with.
Wow, that's my quote.
Nice.
I am going to challenge myself to invest more in this, in the children. I mean, I feel like I do, but even more. And this is my way of just telling you guys I appreciate your time today by going back after this and challenging myself to truly show that I appreciate.
Yeah, I know that for a lot of like the folks that I am close to, or that I like interact with a lot of my day to day with, like they don't get to necessarily see like what happens in the life of a teacher, right? Like I think Jessica, like you mentioned, people imagine this like teacher who like magically has everything all together or like somehow figures everything out, right? And or like the school system being this like perfect place where all the kids are getting the best education possible. And I think hearing your perspective on all this has been like really enlightening, and I think just like brings a lot of like what has happened like this year. Like this year is not an isolated event. It's like a lot of different things that have like been exacerbated by this year, right? And so I feel like the things that both of you have said like really brought that to light, and yeah, I think was is gonna be really revealing for a lot of folks who listen. And yeah, I keep wanting to say the word appreciative, but I feel like it's a tough word to say now.
It means,
But I like that.
word means nothing
That
at
word
all.
is now attached with like a
Yeah, like, what do I
really
mean by appreciate? Yeah. So very, yeah.
I hope Chris, aka Hua, aka Mr. Hua, and Jessica, aka Miss Chi, I hope they came here and just offered you guys this fresh perspective that's really necessary for us to kind of hear. And I hope it made you think. I hope it made you feel challenged. And we just continue to allow that space to be present here. And so we end today with all four of us inviting you to enjoy
the wonder.
A drop in the ocean change in the weather. I was praying that you and me might end up together.